Hello, I'm Ronald Merrick, and I'm here to invite you aboard our Starliner. Yes, it's true. Day-to-day living becomes a luxury cruise when you've made your home at Starliner Tower Apartments. Show me your anger, Luna. Show it to me. Long live the new Fletch.
Hi, I'm Edwin Samuelson. Welcome to the CineFiles. The show allows you to eavesdrop on the conversations of fellow film fanatics. I think that's a really lame line. I'm getting tired of saying that. So if anybody out there has a better line, submit it to the Facebook group. Anyway, I'm joined today by my two co-hosts, Mr. Eric Cohen and Mr. Magic Mike Foltz.
He's back!
I'm back! Back in the New York groove.
Yeah.
So today is a show.
We were sick of Jeff anyway, so.
Yeah, Jeff was on our
Don't be racist.
I can't help it.
Don't be hating. Let's see. Okay, yes, back to the show. All right. This is a show we've been talking about a long time. It's been, for a couple of years we've been talking about doing it, and finally we're going to...
And requested over and over again by our fans.
Today we're going to be discussing the entire works of David Cronenberg. It's going to be a multi-parter.
The amount of respect that this man has garnered, and I guess the amount of awards that he has been nominated since
Cronenberg has evolved over the years and become a very unusual director. He started out as an underground filmmaker up in Montreal, and he made a few films. A couple of them are called Crimes of the Future and Stereo, which were very hard films to get through, very Andy Warhol-ish. He was in his early 30s, and he wanted to make his first feature. And there was a company called CineFiles, which was run by perhaps one of the most successful filmmakers ever to come out of Canada. I'm not saying he's the best.
Ivan Reitman?
Yeah, Ivan Reitman. Ivan Reitman put up about 150...
Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
Yeah,
Yes.
Whatever.
150,000 Canadian dollars, and he wrote the script, and they wanted to buy the script, but he said, I'm not going to sell the script unless I can direct the picture. They thought about it for a while, and they said, okay, why not?
They also got funding from the government, because most film productions in Canada get funding from the government.
Here's what happened.
Unlike the United States, where we give our artists nothing.
Well, CineFiles also got matching funds from the Canadian government, and they financed a film called Shivers, a.k.a. They Come From Within.
They came from within.
Which is how I saw the film originally. And this film really does establish David Cronenberg as we would know him for a while. The body being diseased. It's a very, very, very creepy film. And in fact, I would say it's the film that disturbs me the most of his earliest works.
Really?
In fact...
Totally? Out of all of his films?
This one really disturbed me because the low budget feel that, it's very shoestring.
When was the last time you saw it?
I saw it about a few months, 6 months ago.
Okay, so you saw it recently.
It's still very
I would say
disturbing.
it creeped me out the first time I saw it, but I was a teenager.
Maybe it's...
And I had it on VHS, and I was in my 20s, and I checked it out again. I was like, it's a very clever, creative film for its budget, but I think the budget shows. I think it's a bit campy. I think it's a bit cheesy in parts.
Well, I won't overlook those because it's a very low budget, as we mentioned, and it was his first film where he really...
It opens up. The way the film opens is stunning. It's really disturbing, but it's a great opening to the film where you have that scientist with the schoolgirl and he rips her open. You're like, what the fuck? It's a variation of the Night of the Living Dead, the Crazies, the blah, blah, blah. It was like, the 70s had their own early sort of viral horror movie type subgenre, and this was an example of that. But it's like the first, I think, it's the only film of its time that dealt with venereal disease being that.
That's what's very disturbing about it, is the sexual content, the sexuality of it.
Well, I think the concept is a disturbing concept. I think the execution, for example, the lead, I don't know the actor's name, who plays the doctor, I think he's very ineffectual. He's just kind of there.
You have to overlook certain things on low budgets like that, And
yeah, why don't you do that?
And it's a Canadian film back then.
And it's Canadian.
I just thought
it's
that.
It's low budget Canadian.
And that's one thing I want to make clear. I'm not that,
And what's the name of the actress that's in it?
Lynn Lowry.
Right, she was the famous cult actress.
Yeah, she's very good. She's very good in the movie.
And Barbara Steele's in it.
Barbara Steele has a very, very disturbing scene in a bathtub, which it was. In fact, it was so disturbing it was used on the poster art.
Mike, what are your thoughts on this?
You guys, well, it's been like maybe a year since I saw it, so I'm kind of trying to cobble together my memories for that. I just remember that I kind of agree. I think I agree mostly with Ed in the sense that It's a very effective film for what the budget is. Now, of course, you see some holes, and especially with the the special effects. But I think overall the story is told fairly well, and it does have some moments of creepiness. But
It's very tense.
You watch it if you were somebody like Mel Brooks, like he did with Eraserhead. You watch this film and say, this guy's got potential. If we can give him some more money, something can really come of this guy.
So that's why I'm willing to overlook.
And I'm not saying I don't think it's a bad film. I just don't think it's a great film.
Gloria, roll back the tape and let's go see what he said.
Yeah, Mr. Cohen, we got you on tape. Busted.
Son of a bitch.
No, but like I said, I'm willing to look past the little things. The one thing is that there is some things that really do annoy me. The stock music, which some of it is so recognizable because it's been used in other things. It's just too familiar to the library music.
Royalty-free music.
Royalty-free music. Yep, gotta love it. And what also I like is the tone. It really has that cold hospital feel, which we would see later revisited in other Cronenberg works. And I think it's a great movie. It was a pretty big hit. In fact, they said in Canada it was like one of the only films with the Canadian government that actually made money. Back then, the Canadian film industry was very much in its infancy. It just started out, and none of the films really made money. Shivers made a lot of money.
I found the creature somewhat interesting.
The creatures were very unique.
Yeah, the creature itself were very interesting, very creative.
And
so the next film that we went on.
Was more but after the Shivers came out, it was a big hit. And there was an outrage in Canada about it. And then people wrote...
Because the government funded it.
The government funded it. And people said, do you like this? You hate this film? Well, you paid for it. And it was an article, and Cronenberg said he was getting death threats. In fact, someone published his address, and he had to move. That's how bad it was for him. But anyway, he sold it on again with Ivan Reitman and the CineFiles company, and they made a film called Rabid, which also dealt with sexuality and parasites.
And brilliantly cast.
Brilliantly cast. In fact, it was starring a porno actress, Marilyn Chambers, who was not the first choice. And it was David Cronenberg's first choice was Sissy Spacek.
Really?
But Ivan Reitman said, let's get Marilyn Chambers because they wanted something a little bit more. And it makes more sense because she's supposed to be this really alluring creature that can seduce a man in a minute.
Plus the association with porn.
The porn, yeah.
Behind the Green Door, all those films.
And surprisingly, Marilyn Chambers gives an excellent performance, and very sympathetic, very alluring,
she back then she's extremely sexy.
Yeah. Anyway, Marilyn Chambers, you think she'd be this slutty woman, but she comes off very sweet and very innocent in this film, and it works very well. And that's what it takes you. Like you can see how she's like this seductress, and when someone is seduced by you. You're into the moment, and all of a sudden, bam! She attacks. It's very, very disturbing. And what I like about the film is it's shot on such a low budget, but this one, Cronenberg has a whole epidemic, kind of like a Contagion type movie, where the whole world is in a panic and everyone.
Well, I would say that
pulls it off.
His film is a variation on the vampire film.
It is.
That's what it basically is.
But it is so strange.
And the vampire is a seductive creature, and once the vampire has her...
But imagine the concept of this vampire creature.
Well, that's the thing that amazes me about this movie.
No teeth, no fangs.
Right,
it's a worm out of the armpit.
It's a penis.
Yeah.
Coming out of her armpit, which I think is like, what the fuck were you smoking when you came up with that idea? Because that's a really original idea, and it's warped.
It's so original that it's way off left field.
Again, I just like I said about Shivers, I actually like Shivers better.
I do too.
But I think Rabid it has a lot of flaws. There are moments where it's very slow.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, there's big chunks of dull things in there. Like I remember when I first attempted to watch it, because I saw, Marilyn Chambers, and I must have got into it into a part where it was slow, and I kept thinking, this can't be Marilyn Chambers' movie. I must have turned to the wrong channel. And it was like one of those things where it's on cable at like 2 a.m. Right. So as a kid, you're going to stay up till 2 a.m. to watch something. And then you realize, this isn't what I thought it was. Of course, I went back and watched it, and that's when I found out what type of film it was. But when I went back and saw this film, the first thing I thought was, you got a sexy woman here? This is not a sexy film at all. It's not a sexy film.
No.
It kind of lures you in a little bit,
Yeah.
and then after a while, you're like, this is not sexy at all. And then you get to the point right away that you don't want to see her seduce anybody. You almost don't want to see her naked because you know that this weird thing is going to be coming out of her soon. So you're like,
But that's what I think is very unique and wonderful about this film is that it's really disturbing. I mean, that you into it, the scene, and all of a sudden it just completely comes out of nowhere. She attacks.
So in other words, this is another case where we're willing to overlook its flaws.
I'm willing because I mean, for I think it was like $200,000. It's really impressive the scope. Like you really do feel like it's the end of the world, where all these people are going crazy. He really does a good job of staging it very well. I will say again, the biggest flaw, in fact, I think it's a bigger liability in this film than it was in Shivers, is that the stock music in Shivers is really that.
I think
dun,
also.
dun, dun.
I also think the plot structure is flawed. I think that it's like I said, they're
in Shivers or
no, in Rabid, where it's where like there are sections where it just goes on too long, and it just takes a while, and then all of a sudden, epidemic, and it's like there's no gradual buildup. But I would say the first quarter of the film, after the accident in which she's in the hospital and the whole cold clinical thing, classic Cronenberg, it's an amazing film. That first and then when it starts to open up, it starts to fall apart a little bit for me.
I think this is where his whole hospitals as like a fetishization.
Fetishization, or
Yes.
His obsession with hospitals.
hospital.
Yeah,
fetish?
hospitals, cold clinical operating rooms that are the scene of many things that go on that we are not sure of because maybe we're under when these things are happening.
People go into the hospital, they go under, and they don't know what's going to happen to them. They wake up, and then this is what happens. And I think that's a good observation. His next film was a film called Fast Company, which was believe it or not, a Canucksploitation film about race car driving. It's kind of like a Smokey and the Bandit film. And when I first read about this film, I thought it was a real job for hire. I really like Cronenberg making a racing
He
film.
loves racing. He loves Formula
does.
One. He
I got
loves
to-
Formula One racing.
Well, I got to meet him a few years ago. And I asked him this. I said, "Was Fast Company a job for hire, or were you really into it?" And he goes, "I was really into. This film is not at all. I love this film." He goes, "I love this. I tried to put my heart and soul." He's obsessed with cars and machinery. In fact, he made some short. I think it's called The Mean Machine. I can't remember it. You can put
Well,
the
I mean,
title.
Crash, which we're going to talk about later.
Yeah,
on.
we'll talk about it later.
Well, he was going to make a Formula One racing movie called Red Line. I think it was Red Line, and he for some reason financing or he got sidetracked. But
Well, this one is the problem. The Fast Company. I'm just going to mention it very briefly because I think it's an unusual film in its filmography. It doesn't really need a real discussion about it. It's his first attempt at a straightforward, film with no weird stuff in it. And that's the problem, is it takes the subject too seriously, about the corrupt world of racing, and it plays it pretty straightforward. It has some very familiar
so basically,
people in the
Days of
cast.
Thunder is the remake.
Yeah, it would be very much like Days of Thunder. It's too serious. It's not
Or
a
Grand Prix,
it's
No, just Days of Thunder.
Just Days of Thunder.
his next film after this would be a film that I would consider Cronenberg's most personal film, and that film's The Brood. Cronenberg has stated on record he went through a really nasty divorce with his wife. His wife kidnapped a child, and so he took this and he was a very angry man at the time, which understandably his wife stole his kid, and he made a film which I think would be his most angry and disturbing film. I mean, it might even be more. You know what? I might have to say, thinking about it, it might even be more disturbing than Shivers because even though it has a fantastic element, it's more grounded in reality of
The
something.
Brood is probably my favorite of his earliest films. You said Shiver was yours, The Brood is mine. I think Brood is a fantastically disturbing, both psychologically
I can tell you this one thing.
And the
physiologically.
there are.
And it's got Oliver Reed.
That's one
This
set I would
film-
not want to be on.
This film is very disturbing. I don't think it's his most disturbing. That goes to another film that we
We'll
will
get
be
into
talking
later.
about.
Yeah, I'm talking about his earlier period.
But I think this film is very close to his most disturbing. I saw it for the very first time. I think I did. I saw so much shit when I was a kid. I don't ever remember, but I rewatched it about 6 months ago and just blew me away because what I loved about this most is one thing that you'll know about the 70s, like late 60s, but really about the 70s, there was this whole mental therapy movement called EST.
Yeah, Est.
And you were going back into your childhood and almost trying to like right the wrongs from your past that scar you today.
Like primal scream therapy, right?
Exactly. And another great thing is it takes the convention of the mad scientist, or what you think is the mad scientist, and puts that right on its ear and realize this guy is just really out to help.
Really. It's Oliver Reed is basically playing a good guy.
And I think it's funny, as you said, Oliver Reed playing like the psychiatrist. You know, I mean.
But you think going into this film that he is truly a mad scientist and he's playing God with this whatever energy he's dealing with and these creatures. And in reality, he's trying to control the situation and prevent this thing or things from really doing a lot of damage.
I mean, if you haven't seen the movie, folks, there's a bit of a twist there to what Michael's talking about.
We don't want to give it away because this is one I really want people to see.
But the whole idea of this therapy is that it's a kind of therapy that if you have issues, just go ahead and physicalize it. Just physicalize it. It could come out as boils on your skin and stuff like that. And he has one patient that physicalizes her issues in a very unique way.
The scene, though, that stands out for me is one of the most disturbing things, if not the most disturbing thing Cronenberg ever directed, was the scene with the mallets in the daycare. This scene, if you gave it to like some hack director, it would come off as schlocky, whatever, because just think about it, mutant-type things happening.
But the reactions from the children,
that
is amazing.
That's what works.
Really well done.
Is that you never see children put in danger like that. And just to see their reaction, how they're physically traumatized, you feel what the children are feeling.
You also feel that these children are not acting.
And the other scene I was referring to where Oliver Reed goes in to retrieve the daughter.
That's a very creepy.
That is not just creepy, an incredibly intensely scary, suspenseful. It's the most suspenseful thing I think Cronenberg's ever directed. And it's an interesting turn because at this point you're sympathetic with Oliver Reed when you thought you weren't supposed to be, like during the first half of the film.
And another thing, I think, thankfully, it has a wonderful score by Howard Shore, and I'm glad that he can collaborate with Cronenberg for years to come, with a few exceptions.
Howard Shore, who won the Academy Award for Lord of the Rings three times.
Brilliant composer. He worked on Saturday Night Live.
Also Canadian.
Yes, he is. All right, well, let's see. And I gotta say, Oliver Reed is very good in the movie. Art Hindle does a pretty good job. You might recognize him.
I like Art Hindle. I thought he's very good. I like him. I like Art Hindle.
He's also very good in Black Christmas. And another good performance. It's a very creepy performance by Samantha Eggar.
Samantha Eggar is very good in it. And she used to do a lot of like Amicus type movies, stuff like that. She's a British actress.
But I really believe she's out of her mind.
And what's funny is she's a very glamorous looking woman. She's very striking redhead, very nice features, just a very, very handsome woman. And for her to go and do this bizarro role is kind of brave of her.
His next film is a film that got the attention of, Hollywood. It's a film called Scanners. My friend went to a theater and he told me a little story. It was very interesting. He said that he went to the Astor Plaza Theater in New York City. It was a big theater in Times Square. I'm talking, this was a huge theater, over 1,000 seats, very much like the Ziegfeld. And he said he didn't remember what the movie was that they went to see, but he said they showed the trailer for Scanners. He said after the theater had seen the trailer, he had never seen a reaction like that. He said everyone got up, was screaming and going apeshit. And this was a film they thought was going to make lots and lots of money. And
the trailer
is amazing.
Terrifying.
It is one of the most terrifying trailers
It will
ever.
get your blood racing.
For me, it was a 1-2 thing. I remember reading about it in Fangoria magazine when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And the exploding head shot, right? The money shot. And I was like, oh, I got to see this. And then I saw the trailer. I remember seeing the trailer. I can't remember where I saw it, but I was like, oh my God, this looks like the best thing ever.
But it is one of the most amazing promotional things I've ever seen, because immediately when you see that trailer, you go, I have to see that movie, especially if you're a horror fan.
It's probably the second scariest trailer I've ever seen in my life, and the first one would be The Shining. It forced me to run from the room when I was a kid. And of course, as a little kid, I can't go see this film because my parents are not going to take me to see something like that, but when it came to cable, I couldn't wait to see it.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I didn't wind up seeing it until like 10 years after it came out or something like that. I never got it. And then when you watch it, it turns out it's basically an espionage flick.
People take these pills to somehow, tranquilizers for their pregnancies, and then years later, the children have these powers, who are now adults,
right,
and the government decides to round them up, and a lot of them don't want to be rounded up and controlled.
Which is something that has been used over and over and over. You can use it. You can even say that something as recent as the television show Fringe is using that. So this is one of those films that's actually pretty groundbreaking in terms of the theme that it uses, and then see how many copycats follow.
Oh, absolutely, and that's what I think is brilliant. Is the idea of it? Unfortunately.
I don't know if there's an unfortunately to this film.
Yeah, the story is kind of muddled in spots. Even Cronenberg has said on record he wasn't happy with the script because he said that
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you with that. I think Scanners is just a really fun movie.
It's a fun movie.
You know, it's not deep.
No.
You know, there's some weird, like, low-budget stuff going on in there that don't really help what's going on.
It's not that low budget, though. But
it's weird. It looks, you know what I'm saying? Like, things look a little, like when you look at, like, the exploding head gags, you know, stuff like that now, they do look kind of cheesy.
Oh, I disagree with you.
I think so.
You know, I'll tell you.
And the acting, what's his name? Brad?
The lead. Stephen Lack of Acting is his name.
To be fair, he was also acting with, to me, a living legend, Patrick McGoohan.
Yeah.
Who is
Dr. Roof?
No, well, yeah, in the film, and he's the prisoner. He's the secret agent, so he's a god in
Show
my book.
everybody there why you love that. Show
Dun,
that.
dun,
Look
dun.
at that. Prisoner.
And he was also.
I am not a number.
He was also acting against a really good actor too in Michael Ironside.
Michael Ironside steals the movie.
Daryl Revick.
That's what upsets me.
Who is probably one of the best villains of all time.
Absolutely steals the film.
Michael Ironside really should have. I mean, he was in some movies, but he never really broke through as that bad guy. He's such a terrific bad guy. In this movie, there is that scene where he goes, "I'm gonna suck you dry," and he's going to the battle. That is genuinely really, really tense. And that scene.
And he's the one on the CD cover or the movie poster or whatever, you know, with the veins bursting in his head.
That's a great promotional thing. Oh, well, let's talk about that effect. The effect that we were talking about the trailer was supervised by perhaps the greatest special effects makeup man in the history of makeup, and that is Dick Smith, who worked on The Exorcist. This effect was so simplistic but so genius at the same time. They took a head and they put a whole bunch of bloody condoms inside of it. They got someone behind it and shot it with a shotgun. That's how it worked. That's how the effect worked. They blew it up, but it feels so real because it's edited and put together so real. And a lot of the other effects, like the bladders, the veins are popping up. That's really clever. The people melting. However, those are great ideas, like the secret society. But then you have this espionage stuff. It feels like out of a Tom Clancy novel or something.
But it's good. It's funny. It's effective.
It's a fun film. I don't think it was meant to be any deeper.
One of my favorite things about Scanners is the set pieces when they go into the room and it's the sculptures of the hands.
And they go inside a guy's head. Yeah, he made a sculpture of his own head.
That's an actor by the name who I like very much, Robert Silverman.
Who was part of his repertory.
He was also in The Brood as the guy who showed his neck and he had.
Well, he's been in a few Cronenberg films.
Yeah, he's been in a lot of Cronenberg films. In fact, he was in another one we'll talk about later. But anyway, it made Scanners did make what problem with Scanners, and even Cronenberg said they had a locked-in date because in Canada you have to do it a certain time because of the financing. And he said I wasn't ready to write the script. I had to rewrite it as we were there, shooting it. And as you know, that is not the way to do a script. Surprisingly, it's still a very good movie. I enjoy it. I think it has a lot of things.
Well, some people have pulled that off.
And he did pull it off. And like I said,
and I think it's paced really well. It goes like 1, 2, 3. Boom, boom, boom. There's no slow or dull moments in this thing.
So anyway, his producer who produced Scanners produced his next film, Videodrome, which
for me,
wow, what a movie.
For me, his creepiest film.
I fucking love Videodrome.
Can we just do it? Let's do it.
I have the Criterion.
Dude, let's do it. Let's do it together. Let's do it. Long live the new Flash.
But the problem is with Videodrome, unfortunately, Cronenberg would repeat himself with this later and not do it as successfully. But we'll get to that later. But Videodrome was one of my favorite college-age movies because obviously I was stoned and on drugs every time I watched this fucking thing. And
it's his 2001.
It's his trippiest movie.
I never ever watched it high, and yet it disturbed me to no end.
So, and James Woods is amazing in this. He's
terrific.
so good. And Debbie
Yeah,
Harry.
I was gonna say even the cameo by Debbie Harry.
Well, not a
little role.
cameo. She's
well,
in
the
it for a
little
while.
role. She's not in it a lot.
Cronenberg knows how to use her in this film. You know, call her. Maybe she's not a great actress, but he knew how to use her.
Just
her
like
presence.
just like with Stephen Lack. That's what I mean. He goes, here's your strengths, here's your weaknesses. I'm going to retool it for you and make it as good as I can. And he did.
This film should have been called Mindfuck, because that's what this film is. It is a complete and utter mindfuck. Because by the end of the film, you don't know what the fuck's going on.
When I first saw this film years ago, I didn't know what to make of it. It was just so strange. I'm like, what is happening here? I mean,
I went in
still
with
don't
like
know.
these preconceived notions of what I was expecting. By the end of it, I was so shaken by what I had seen. I was like, I just don't know what the hell I saw.
Most people have seen this film. Anyone who's a Cronenberg fan has seen Videodrome. You know, so it's not like we can spoil this movie really. But if those of you who haven't seen it, you know, just shut out for a second. But what I love is how it's a textbook example of how to build on the weirdness, where like it just gets weirder and weirder. And okay, at one point he starts to develop this like slit in his stomach. It's like this
Yeah, where he can store his
vagina,
gun. Yeah.
right? And then even adding to the weird, you have the guy at the tape who's like his pusher kind of like character. Puts the tape in that slit like it's like a VHS player.
It was actually a Betamax. It was a little smaller.
Or
just like
whatever it was, but
VHS.
but still, and then it just builds and it builds and it builds to the point where you don't know what's real, you don't know what's part of the hallucination.
And you know what it reminds me a lot of?
And the gun, the whole thing with the gun is
And then
just
the gun
mind-blowing.
becomes a part of him.
It comes about the fusion of body with machine. You know what this film would really much remind me of? A lot of respects would be later revisited as Jacob's Ladder. The Dream.
It has a bit of Jacob's Ladder to it, yeah. But there's a lot of films that owe a lot to Videodrome.
Yeah.
But the
there's a lot
thing with
now.
Videodrome is it blurs the lines perfectly of what is reality and what is the fantasy world of going on in Videodrome. Because at the end, you just don't know.
James Woods, I believe, gives a really great performance in a Cronenberg film. It might be one of the best performances in an early Cronenberg film. What I like is that they take time to develop this sleazy character who runs this pirate station. And he's
I
really
just want to
unscrupulous.
clarify what you're saying. You think that it's the most realized character in a David Cronenberg movie so far?
I'm
I'm trying to figure out what you mean, because I thought the
think it's-
performances in The Brood were outstanding.
No, I mean, I think they're good. I just think that here's what happens, is that they're well drawn out, and then you get an actor like James Woods who adds so much more to the page.
Okay, so you're basically saying you think it's the best performance up to that point in a Cronenberg film.
Yes.
Okay.
I think he's,
Just one
yeah,
person.
yeah. I think it's the best performance of that time in a Cronenberg film because he really does. It's a very difficult role to play because he's not really a nice guy, but at the end you're really rooting for him, you know, to get through this venture.
In a way, it's kind of a mystery, and you want to see him solve this mystery or whatever it is on what exactly is happening to him, what his mission is, how does he get over this? But yeah, you're right. He's not a nice guy.
No.
He's kind of a sleazy character, and it's almost like what happens to him is like payment for what kind of person he was and what he was pursuing, and it's like be careful what you wish for type of thing.
Right, exactly. And we've seen this conceit so many times from J-horror like The Ring, you know, or we talked about in Masters of Horror, the episode of John Carpenter directed, you know, Cigarette Burns, that whole thing is like be careful what it is, be careful what it is you want to know.
When we were younger, there was something called UHF channels. You know, they're not really around too much more. And I remember being a kid, and you know, you would turn these channels, and it would be like there's like pirate radio, and you'd find these weird channels. And that's what the whole idea of Videodrome is, like, you know, broadcasting these weird signals. In fact, that's how David Cronenberg said he came up with the idea. He was in Montreal, but he was getting signals from Buffalo, New York, and he was like thinking, and that's how the genesis of this project came to be. It's a very good movie. It's one of my favorite Cronenberg films.
The
Blu-ray is phenomenal.
the Criterion version is really good.
Yeah, one more thing that's great about it, too, it's uncut. The versions that ever came out here were always missing a little bit of footage. Like, you know, there's a scene of the Samurai Dreams where you see the dildos. Those were all cut and trimmed in the R-rated version. So the Criterion allows you to see the full uncut version. Also, the packaging is beautiful with looks like a beta tape, and it's a really great package.
We all agree.
Rent it
We
out.
love this film. It's like probably his first masterpiece.
And people said the reason that it bombed was because it was such a weird movie. Well, maybe so, but you know what? If you look at the Criterion disc, they have some of the trailers that they used to market the film. Oh, we're talking about how great the marketing was for scanners. This is the worst trailer ever to sell a movie. It's a CGI image of Deborah Harry, and it just says
CGI in the early 80s?
Mm-hmm. It's like you'll see it. I'll link to it. It's terrible. It's not like a CGI, but it's like a
But it found new life.
Yeah.
You know, in VHS
Well,
windows and stuff like that. It became a major cult movie.
Yeah, it became very well respected down the line. Kind of like John Carpenter's The Thing.
Ted Turner went on the record saying this film was despisable garbage. And
Or despicable.
He said it was despisable, despicable, whatever. He said, I will not release. Let me do that again. This film was despicable, and he would not release it in theaters.